Well, good morning. It's good to have you with us for our midweek devotions on Hump Day. I have Ruth by my side, and in fact, during this past week, I was able to secure her promise to be by my side every single Hump Day from now until the end of our lives.
And he has to pay because it was a compromise. So he has to do a thing for me that he wanted to do that I didn't want him to do. So we're good. We compromised in our marriage and we're tit for tat.
Yes. I realized that people actually enjoy Ruth's stories more than mine.
I don't think so.
And that it's just more fun when she's with me. So I asked her if she would do this on a regular basis, and she was reluctant. But
I had a plan.
She had leverage.
I had leverage. I went, okay, I'll do this if you do this for me. And he did it. So we're good.
She used the leverage. She used that leverage to get a concession from me.
Mm-hmm. Worked.
And it did work. I'll just tell you real quick. I normally try to go to the Y to exercise 3 or 4 times a week, and the Y is open now, but I don't feel totally comfortable going there. Good morning, neighbor. Hi, Corolla. So I found this group called Camp Gladiator, and they exercise outside, like in church parking lots, and it's really sort of like PE. They're outside and they're way apart. Felt like a good way to do some exercise, but the coronavirus cases are jumping way up here in Texas, and so Ruth said, I don't feel comfortable even you doing that outside. So if you give that up, then I'll do this.
And all of you that exercise, don't try to convince me that it would be okay, because I'm kind of paranoid about germs. So this just gives me peace that he's not with a bunch of people he doesn't know. I only want my cone of people I know what they're doing when they're not with me. Very small group of people to keep us safe.
So I'm trying to find us so I can just say good morning to people. Is yours showing?
Oh, here we go.
Ruth's going to try to find us on her phone.
Yep,
and
we're on.
Let me see. Can I just
My
use this?
My phone works so good. Yours, and it's the same kind of phone, so it really shouldn't.
Yes.
If you missed that story, we're not going to repeat it, but me being here was a trade-off. He had to do something for me, so I do this, because this is not one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. So, and the other thing...
I enjoy seeing all of you and talking to you, but not this way. Okay.
So the other thing that we promised ourselves and make this promise to you is that I'm going to cut down the amount of rambling that I do.
Me too.
So we can do this in like 15 to 20 minutes. We'll hear some scripture, which is always a good thing. We'll offer some prayers, which is like breathing for people of faith. And then mixed in a couple of stories that we think will hopefully illustrate how that really gets lived out in our day-to-day lives. So here's the topic. We're going to talk a little bit about prayer and a little bit about healing. And of course, healing was a huge part of the ministry of Jesus. There's tons of stories in the Bible about that. And in the days of this pandemic, obviously a lot of people have been praying for healing for loved ones. So that's the topic. And here's the outline. We've got a little outline actually. I'm going to read for you one of my favorite stories from the Bible that describes a time when Jesus healed somebody. And then Ruth's going to tell you a little bit about one of our religious pilgrimages to a location that's actually pictured right behind us. And then I'm going to share with you an intense 48-hour period of time in which I prayed for healing probably more than I ever have in my entire life, involving a beloved woman in our congregation who passed away 17 years ago named Deborah Dewar. And then Ruth's going to have a closing prayer.
Right.
And along the way, we hope that God's invitation to all of us to come to Him in prayer for anything, and certainly for healing as well, will be reinforced and be a gift and a blessing. So, here we go. From Luke chapter 5. This is entitled in some study Bibles, Jesus Forgives and Heals a Paralyzed Man. And it has a couple of insights that are just fascinating I'll talk about later. One day Jesus was teaching, and Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting there. They had come from every village of Galilee and from Judea and Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was with Jesus to heal the sick. Some men carrying a paralyzed man on a mat tried to take him into the house to lay him before Jesus. And when they could not find a way to do this because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and lowered him on his mat through the tiles into the middle of the crowd right in front of Jesus. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said, "Friend, your sins are forgiven." The Pharisees and the teachers of the law began thinking to themselves, "Who is this fellow who speaks blasphemy? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Jesus knew what they were thinking and asked, "What are you thinking? Why are you thinking these things in your heart? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the paralyzed man, "I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home." And immediately he stood up in front of them, took what he had been lying on, and went praising God. And everyone was amazed and gave praise to God. They were filled with awe and said, "We have seen remarkable things today." Well, there's no doubt in my mind that all of you have seen and experienced some remarkable things in your faith journey, including people like Darlene Bond and Linda Martzel and Diane Campbell. It's so good to have all of you with us. Diane, it's nice that I saw your name most recently, because the picture behind us is the story that Ruth's going to share right now, which is an incredible Catholic church with an amazing history. So Ruth, you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes. This is a painting of Chimayo, which doesn't normally, we're in the kitchen, it's not normally there, so it's quite big. It's in John's office, we just got it. We went on a trip to Santa Fe and Taos over a little over a year ago with Kathy Reset, and the three of us were driving from Taos down to Santa Fe, and came upon this small church, and it's called Chimayo. Chimayo has been there for over 200 years. It's on a hill. It used to be a Native American healing ground, really, and it's got a fast, I'll give you a Cliff Note version. There was a priest working in the area. He saw a glow on the other hill. He went over to this hill, and when he dug it where the light was, he found a crucifix buried there. And then the story progresses and more things happen. But as it ends up, they decide, or he decides, the people decide they're going to build a church on this spot where he found this crucifix in the dirt. And people have been coming for 200 years for healing. This is like Lourdes in France, where people go known for healing. This is the United States place for that. Interestingly, they chose not to make this a tourist attraction, so it's not advertised much. They didn't want all the trappings of sort of Disneyland look on it, so they kept it very private. They get over 300,000 pilgrims a year. It's a lot. Many of them walk up to this place. to pray for healing, and they believe the healing is in the dirt. And so we went in there, and very quiet, not many people when we were there. It's a beautiful little church on the inside, very small. And you go off to the left, which would be like the sacristy in a church, and it's a room, and it's candles. And before you go in that room, you go in really one at a time, but there weren't many people there, so we didn't have to wait. And the room is filled with letters and tokens of people who have been healed before you go in. And you go in this room, and it's rather dark, candle lit with lots of candles. And in the center, there is a small hole. It must not be more than 12, 15 inches. And of this holy dirt, and you pray for healing, whatever. A lot of people go for healing for very specific physical ailments or conditions, and people feel healed here. So it's a very sacred place, and I think that's what you feel in that spot. How many prayers were done, and the only humorous thing is there was nobody in there to tell you, what do you do? Do you look at the dirt? Do you pray with the dirt? Do you put the dirt on you? You know, a good Lutheran girl like me is sitting there. How do I do this?
Where's
right?
the bulletin that tells us exactly what to do?
Where's the directions? There's no directions. So Kathy and I are standing looking at the dirt, and John is, and finally I thought, oh, for Pete's sake. So I took my shoes off and I stood in the dirt. And then I look up, and there's a sign up there that's very small that says, please do not stand in the dirt. And then I go through this, oh my God, I ruined my chance of healing, and I did it wrong, and all those crazy things for a few moments. And then I figured, like praying, there's no wrong prayer, there's no wrong way of doing these things. So we all relaxed, and I actually brought some of this dirt home.
Which is
should I go? Huh?
Blessed dirt.
It's blessed dirt. Now
and it's described as holy dirt.
Yes, and all the dirt comes from that hill right there, and they do refill it, so it's not like it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Because I think those kinds of things. The priest fills it every morning with the dirt from the hill, and they take it very seriously.
Because people take it. Remember
yes.
There was an elderly Hispanic man that was on his hands and knees that had opened up a little napkin and taken some dirt and put it in the napkin and folded it up and stuck it in his pocket to take home to a family member, I think.
And when we left, there was this beautiful little family from California, and elderly parents, and they had their adult son who had had a heart attack the year before, and they had brought him there and or brought dirt to him, and he's doing real well, and they came back to give thanks to the place. And that story they told us was so powerful. It truly was a holy ground story. We didn't know them. They poured out their soul about this healing, and that too is a blessing. So it has become a special place for us.
Yeah. If you'd ever like to visit it, it's between Taos and Santa Fe.
It's 40 miles north of Santa Fe.
On a windy mountain road with a little sign, easy to miss.
And they have beautiful other artwork and statues and grottos, and the grounds are very beautiful. It's very quiet. Should I tell the story of the dirt now?
Sure.
About bringing it to church?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I'll try to get the theology
right. This leads us into theology of this. So I have this dirt. It's been 1.5 years, and I've not used this dirt at all. I keep it above my kitchen sink with a candle I light when someone's going through surgery or a difficult time. And I don't feel the candle in this dirt or healing, but what it does for me is in my busy scurrying around, and I am in front of the kitchen sink a lot, it reminds me, if I light that candle, that their surgery's at 10, I will forget because I get busy and I go, oh my God, they're ready. So it's a reminder to me to pray during that time more than anything else, that something serious is happening today or whatever. So the dirt is next to it to remind me of this healing. When John used it in his sermon once, not the dirt, but the story, and I was very reluctant and didn't want him to include it. Not only is it a very personal thing, which you feel with this, but I knew that this is not magic dirt, and that people in a search for finding a cure or for an ailment are going to want some of this dirt. And not that I didn't want to share it, but they were missing the point here. It's not this dirt. And lo and behold, he said it, and I had a couple of people who were dealing with family members with heavy issues were determined I should give them some of this dirt. And I said, no, it's not the dirt. This is not magic dirt. It's your faith that you're involved in. This is a reminder for me. You know, granted, healing goes on there, and I'm sure it does, and God does wonderful, mysterious things, but I can't just give you the dirt and you rub it on somebody's chest who's had a heart attack and they get better. You know, that very cheapens it. And I had some very well-meaning people that were really pretty adamant that I had to give them some dirt. A couple of them even brought Kleenexes and stuff for me to put some dirt in, and I finally just gave somebody some. But I didn't want that, and I think that's kind of the issue here, is I believe in holy places. I think when you're standing in that room with that dirt, you feel the power of 200 years of people in that small place who have sent up prayers to God for healing. And that is an overwhelming power in that room, simple room. And I think that's part of it, big part of it, that you're in a holy space. You feel God's presence in there. You can't help but feel it. That's all it's been used for, is prayers. It's kind of like when sometimes I run on errands with John and he has to run by the church when it's not in use, and he runs around and does what he needs, and I just go sit in the sanctuary. And I know some of you have done that with your churches or ours, and there is a powerful feeling of sitting in an empty church by yourself, because I have always felt in awe of how many prayers have gone up to God in that space, silent or spoken or sung, thousands and thousands. And when you look at this place is 200 years, people have been coming here to pray. We can't dismiss that. And some people are healed, and some are healed in different ways, and you have to stay open to that too. But that's Chimayo, and so because it was such a memorable time, we've got this painting of it, and it's going to hang in John's office. It's quite large, but a big reminder that God can heal in his own way.
Absolutely.
And there are holy places, sacred spaces. Find them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I'm just going to add a small PS, because I don't want to tread on the grounds of any kind of heresy here. And I thought Ruth did a brilliant job of framing it in a way that makes sense to all of us. So good morning, Peggy Davidson and Andy Lean. I'll see you, Andy, soon as we pick up more food for our food pantry, and Dave and Kay Fox and Rhonda Hartley. We talked about this yesterday just to make sure that we understood theologically why it's okay to have some holy dirt in our kitchen. And what we basically, I think, both agreed on is that it's not literally the dirt itself, but a reminder that there are places that draw us and places that encourage us to open our heart to God and to ask God for whatever it is we're needing. And healing is often one of those things that we are needing for ourselves or for our loved ones. And if a place can draw people to open their hearts to God, that makes it holy. And so whether it's Chimayo out in the deserts of northern New Mexico or 715 East Lamar in Arlington, there are places that are made holy by the prayers of God's people, by people living out their faith and trusting God and opening up their hearts to Him and trusting Him for the gifts and the blessings that we need, which often include healing. And so if it's driving by a church that reminds you of that, or if there's a little thing of dirt on your kitchen sink that reminds you of that, it just cues you that God is always inviting us and wanting us to bring to Him what's on our hearts. So thank you for that. And you can fact check any of these stories with Kathy Reset, because she was with us.
Yes, she was.
Yeah. Hi, Gail. Good morning, Scott and Don. Oh, by the way, since we're talking about prayers and healing, prayers for you, Scott, and your health. And Gail, I want you to know it's 72 degrees here in Texas, which almost never happens. So this is like a California kind of day here in Texas, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous. Yes. Gorgeous. So I'm going to quickly run through with you a story that left a lasting impression on me, because it involves both prayer and healing and some lessons learned that maybe can be helpful for you. It involves a 48-hour period of time in my life when I prayed more for healing than I've ever prayed in my life. And it didn't turn out the way I wanted, but it probably still turned out in a way that is a gift for all of us to be aware of. So it involves a woman by the name of Deborah Dewar, who passed away 17 years ago. She was a remarkable woman. I got to know her when she and her family, her husband Charles and their 2 kids, George and Juliana, became a part of our congregation. Incredibly devout, faithful people, led Bible studies, wrote devotions for us. Deborah was brilliant. She graduated magna cum laude from Vanderbilt. She got her MD from the University of Indiana and was an ophthalmologist. And because she had kind of the heart of a missionary, she gave up her practice and established a totally free eye clinic for the city of Arlington here, and was just beloved by many people. And she taught me a lot about prayer. Well, in 2003, she was driving in northern Oklahoma and was involved in a serious car accident, was taken to a hospital in Joplin, Missouri, and I can only think of a couple of times that I've ever done this in all my years of ministry, but I just felt like I needed to go. So I got in my car and I drove to Joplin, Missouri. And I met with Charles and George and Juliana, and Deborah was in ICU, and we prayed. And we prayed the rest of that day, we prayed that night, we prayed the next day, we prayed the next night. For 48 hours we prayed. We prayed for Deborah. I prayed for their family. At one point, and I won't forget this, the brain surgeon came out to give an update on how Deborah was doing, and we asked him if we could pray for him, and he looked stunned for a moment, because they're like God, and and he nodded and said, yeah, okay, sure, and we all held hands and we prayed for the surgeon. So the amazing thing about that experience was that Deborah lived out her faith as well as anyone I know, and there were people all over the entire country praying for her, and yet she was not healed, and she passed away 3 days after the accident. So one of the things that I learned from that kind of takes me back to the opening Bible story. There were 2 insights from that story that I just absolutely always try to remember when it comes to prayer and to healing. And the first was that when Jesus first saw this man that needed to be healed, the first thing he recognized was not that man's faith, but the faith of his friends who were determined to have him healed, and who went up on a roof and lowered him down to Jesus. And so Jesus remarks upon the faith of his friends. And that tells me that our faith matters. That when you pray for someone, that's something that Jesus recognizes, something that our Lord notices, and that it matters. And so when we as people of faith pray for others, I think that is important. Clearly it was important to Jesus, and I think it needs to continue being important to us. And the first thing that Jesus did in that story was he forgave this man his sins before he healed him physically. And that just reminds me that healing is bigger than physical healing. He wanted to restore this man's connection to God, wanted him to know that he was whole and accepted and loved. And it just reminds me that healing happens in so many levels, that there's physical healing, but emotional healing, spiritual healing, and that Jesus wants all of those things for us. And in the case of someone like Deborah Dewar, and she's not unique because I know many of you have prayed for healing for yourself and for loved ones, and it didn't turn out the way you were hoping and the way you were praying for. But even when that happens, what I try to remember was Deborah's funeral. And at the cemetery, it just crossed my mind, and it has ever since at numerous funerals, that at a graveside, when people feel like on that day they are being lowered into the earth, what I think about is that story, that they are being lowered to Jesus and to be healed, and to be healed in ways that we were not able to heal them, and to be healed in ways that are eternal, made whole, made right. And that takes us into the mystery, of course, and the miracle of our faith. And it just is a marvelous reminder to me that all of your prayers for yourself and for your loved ones matter. They're noticed by Jesus. They count. We don't control the outcomes, but we know that it is a gift and a blessing that comes from God. And we know also that even when our prayers aren't answered, that God's healing continues, and that all of us will be healed and made whole one day. So that's almost a whole darn sermon, isn't it?
Yes. Good one. Important.
I don't know about that. Hi, I'm McCormick and Susie Azustowitz. But prayer and healing, I think, will continue to be a big part of my life, your life, our country, our world right now, and that your faith and your prayers for each other absolutely matter, make a difference, and that healing comes. Not always in the way we want, but it comes and will come. So Ruth has agreed to pray, right?
Yes, and I healing to me, I pray for healing all the time for people, specifically, and for me and my family, my friends, people I see on TV, and I do that. But it's I don't know what words to use, even though I know that's not the important part, but it's very difficult because we don't know what outcomes are going to be, and so we have to just trust and have faith. I do believe that it helps to find a sacred, holy space for you where many prayers have been said. And those places, to me, bring great comfort. And that's healing to me, is that comfort that comes with it. And knowing that, that's what I shoot for. So we're going to pray. Dear Lord, I thought last night, as you know, because you were there, before I went to sleep, about prayers of healing, and then it struck me, with this pandemic all over the world, not one smidgen of our world has not been touched. How many prayers have come up to you from many different religions, and people who probably don't even really believe. You must be a very busy God. And all of a sudden, that image of just seeing all these little hearts and like on Facebook come up, there must be millions and millions right now in the world, and I don't know them by name, and there's no way that's possible, but I pray for all those people who are praying in the world for healing from COVID, for themselves, their families, the doctors, the nurses, all those struggling to keep this at bay, the scientists. I can't imagine what you're hearing, and yet you hear each one individually and specially. You are there for us individually, and you're there for us is a huge world of people. We ask for healing, to find healing for COVID, to find a vaccine soon, so that the dying and the illnesses can stop, and the anxiousness and the fear and the hatred that follows for all kinds of reasons stops. But this is all in your hands, so we will continue to pray for healing for this disease and healing for peace between people, and love and trust and openness to work together to do this right. We also pray for all those who are having other surgeries and other health issues and experiencing the death of family members and all the healings. It goes on and on, but
So may the Lord be with Priscilla
Amen.
Delude.
Yes, that must have been a little sign. So Priscilla, I'm sure you're not watching this, but we are going to pray for you in your healing from your surgery this week also. Amen.
Amen.
Second amen.
Amen and amen.
Amen, 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 amen.
So thank you again for joining us. Hopefully this wasn't as long. Good morning, Grant.
Well,
Blake,
it was
hope you guys
30
had a
minutes, and you
spectacular
said
day.
20.
Where do you see 30 minutes?
That clock right there on the wall.
Oh.
We have a clock right here.
Where? So just so you know, I would have been happy to give up even more than exercise for you
And
to
this
do this
hasn't
with
been
me.
as bad as
It's
I
not
thought
that
it would
bad.
be.
These are our friends.
I know
for
that.
crying out loud.
But I'm getting kind of old and haggard. I see all my wrinkles.
Yeah.
But I have to know that's okay too.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks again for taking this time to be with us, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Keep those prayers going. The world needs them.
Yes, they do. We
Peace.
do. Bye.
Peace.